It is early. It is exactly 4:05 a.m. I'm not a morning person. Really not a morning person. It's not too often that I can be convinced to get up this early, let alone to get up and hike to the top of a mountain in the dark. But I'm told that there is the opportunity to see a sunrise if I do that. And so I'm here at Salt Mountain in Waikagama for this morning's walkabout. This is a relatively short hike, even shorter if you start in the campground near here, but I didn't think it would be particularly neighborly to be pulling up to hike at this time in the morning. So I'm headed out on the Highlander Trail, which will cover 970 meters to the Salt Mountain Trail. From there, it'll be another kilometer or so to the summit and the look-off. Hopefully I'll make it for sunrise. I'll be moving carefully, but also quietly. It's the time of day when you are most likely to encounter wildlife, and in the dark, I'm as likely to startle them as they are to startle me. A lot of animals call this area home, from moose to deer, black bear, coyote, and numerous small animals and bird species. As I've been climbing, I've actually encountered some animals in the dark, mostly eyes peering out through the forest. I'm sure wondering what on earth I'm doing hiking this trail at this time in the morning. I've also heard the noises of birds and other animals as they begin to wake up. But in addition to the eyes, I felt the claws of what I think, or maybe I hope, were a couple of small mammals as they ran across my feet on my way up this trail. If you want a guarantee to be startled, that will do it. I don't care how inflappable you are. Well, I've been traveling up the Highlander Trail to get to this point, and now I'm joining the Salt Mountain Trail. In doing so, I've actually climbed 120 meters, which is about half of the total elevation that I'll ultimately reach. The light is starting to come out, so I've managed to ditch the headlamp, but still need the flashlight. Waikagama, the name of both the park and the community I'm in, is a Mi'kmaq word meaning head of the waters. The first Scottish residents arrived in this part of Cape Breton in 1821 as part of a large arrival of Highlanders, mispronouncing the Mi'kmaq word and calling the area Hogama. Over subsequent years, Waikagama, for a time, would become an important port for ocean-going vessels and commercial fishing. Salt Mountain, which I'm climbing this morning, is said to have a saltwater or brine spring at the top. The salt springs in the area are how this mountain gets its name. The mountain itself is not made of salt, but rather composed of coarse sandstones and dark shales. Once I get to the summit, I'll be looking towards Orangedale out over one part of the Bredor Lake. Now, the Bredor Lake is actually part of the Atlantic Ocean, or at least an arm of it. It's been called an inland sea, but it's really a very large estuary. It covers 260 square kilometers and effectively splits Cape Breton Island in two. It's deep, over 180 meters in places. Despite being an arm of sorts of the Atlantic Ocean, the salinity is about half of that of the open ocean. This is because the lake is connected to the Atlantic by two channels created by glacial erosion 2 million years ago. Those channels limit how much salt water enters the lake during any tidal change. The rest of the water comes from fresh water, coming down off the mountains surrounding the lake. This results in a really interesting ecosystem that allows plants to grow around the lake you wouldn't normally see by ocean beaches. The lake and its watershed are very special. I have made it to the summit of Salt Mountain just in time for sunrise. There is a haze and quite a bit of cloud today, but the Bredor Lake is turning a little bit pink, and that's kind of impressive to see. It's a different sort of sunrise, perhaps not what I was expecting when you think the word sunrise, but it is absolutely beautiful, and it looks different than it would at any other time of day. You know, Salt Mountain was donated in 1959 by Isabel Stewart Farley in memory of her brother, Hugh McClellan, who passed away during World War I. He was a soldier. Now, as I look down over the communities of the Bredor Lake, Waikagama, I'm looking over communities that are not only just waking up, but communities that are part of a biosphere. The Bredor Biosphere region covers the entire Bredor watershed and is an area designated by UNESCO's Man and Biosphere program. It's an area that covers 3,200 square kilometers, an area much larger than just the lake itself. There are 1,000 kilometers of shoreline. The goal is to balance nature with sustainable human use in the area. This lake is actually an example of sea level rise from 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. Back then, had I been able to look down from here, I'd have seen lots of smaller lakes and ponds draining out to the Atlantic Ocean by way of long winding rivers. As sea level rose and glaciers retreated, the ocean water flooded the valley and lowlands and resulted in what you see today. The highest points, such as towards the Cairns Mountain, remained above water, helping to give the lake, or estuary, its unusual shape. Because of how it was formed, there is an unusual mix of species in the lake, from Arctic to subtropical ones. For example, there are some shrimp and worms found in the lake that are only found outside this area, in the high Arctic. I made my way to the second and highest lookoff on Salt Mountain, still looking out over the Bredor Lake. It's such a beautiful morning. The air is cool and crisp, and as you get up this high, you get out of the humidity of the forest. I'm fortunate that I reached the first lookoff when I did, because already the cloud and the fog is starting to move along the lake. It's been an interesting week this week in Cape Breton as the rain has danced around the mountains. I'm going to spend a little bit more time up here on the mountain just enjoying the morning before I head down and then work my way a little further north to a place where there is no trail map, and it's a little bit of a mystery. There are some hikes that are as much a mystery as there are anything else, and this will be one of those hikes. It is a gray, misty day here, and the rain has been coming in over the mountains, and so I didn't want to get caught in the forest today. But a faithful viewer of Walkabout told me about some ruins near the mouth of North River on St. Anne's Bay, and said they would be worthy of an exploration if I could find them. So that's where I am on today's Walkabout. There is no trail map for this one, at least not that I could find. No listing on the hiking apps. I'm not even really sure the distance. I'm told that to find the site, I just head off the end of the Murray Road into the woods. That sounds a bit like the beginning of a true crime podcast, but it's what's on tap today. Maybe a kilometer, maybe more, maybe less. That's how adventures are made. The ruins I'm in search of have been at times subject to some speculation, and that's not really any surprise because St. Anne and the area around it, the communities around it, have a very rich history. This area was the site of Captain Daniel's 1629 fortress. This was the capital of Cape Breton at one time. It was also the location of Fort Dauphin. It was the location of the first Jesuit missionary to the Mi'kmaq. Just so much here. The possibilities seemed endless. And the population over the years, especially on this side of the bay, has dwindled over the years. And so there haven't been that many people around to actually say what the ruins are. If you've seen my hike to the nearby North River Falls, you know this is also where Norman MacLeod brought Scottish pioneers to settle in 1819. The famous Angus MacAskill, the Cape Breton giant, who in the 1981 edition of the Guinness Book of World Records was listed as the world's tallest man at 7 foot 9 inches, and also the strongest, lived in this part of Cape Breton as well, and is buried across the bay in Englishtown. This area is rich with stories, and this location in Murray is no different. This is the first of the ruins that I found. Now, people have speculated over the years that this site may have been a hotel, a monastery, perhaps even a place to make moonshine. At the start of the 20th century, there were two major employers in this area, the Victoria County Gypsum Company and the North River Lumber Company. Victoria County was booming with these two employers. The Gypsum Company ran from 1904 until sometime in World War I, when the risk of U-boats meant ships couldn't transport gypsum safely from this bay. This is a swallowtail butterfly, and they're very common up and down North River. These buildings were nothing quite as exotic as a hotel or any of those other things. Standing like a castle on the edge of the mouth of North River, this is the remains of a lumber mill. Not only was this lumber mill a large employer in this community, it was the largest employer in all of northern Cape Breton. And this site was huge. Not only did the mill exist here, but there was a warehouse, there was a pier out here on the water, there was a boarding house that even included a jail. And up on North River, which is that way, they actually adjusted the river to make it easier to bring the logs here from the 31 camps that lined the river and its tributaries. To give you an idea of just how important this mill was to the area, there was even a guest house on site for visiting dignitaries. It's really no surprise such a place would exist, as the mill also had political clout behind it. In March 1899, a lease called the Big Lease in Cape Breton was signed. It covered an area of 510,000 acres in Cape Breton, 395,000 in Victoria County, and the rest in Inverness. One condition of the lease was that pulp mills be constructed and no raw lumber be exported, thus ensuring forestry and manufacturing jobs in the region. With a lease as big as what existed here, it is no surprise that allegations of corruption, patronage, and kickbacks spread like wildfire. Frank Barnum, who was the manager of the wood lease and was also effectively the owner of the mill and the forestry operations, was very close with Premier Murray. In fact, the Smith's Mountain Road, which was the road which led to this mill and along which much of the forestry operation was conducted, was improved and reconstructed entirely at the cost of the province. And then it was renamed the Murray Road after the Premier. So while this mill may be gone, the memory of the mill remains both in the ruins and in the name of that road. As a final sort of twist to the story, Premier George Murray was a Liberal, and despite rumors of patronage and kickbacks involving Frank Barnum, ultimately Barnum ran and won election to the provincial legislature for the Conservatives. Ultimately, Barnum would have various interests all over the province and would retire a millionaire in 1926, after which he turned his life to the cause of forest conservation rather than harvesting, traveling the continent lobbying governments to require reforestation of cut and burned lands. He spent more than $250,000 of his own money to put Canadian forests into public, protected hands permanently. Over the years, the forestry operations and the mill changed hands a number of times, ultimately landing in the hands of the Oxford Paper Company. Now, their holdings in Cape Breton were largely expropriated in 1936 for the creation of the Cape Breton Highlands National Park. By 1958, operations had slowed so much here that parts of the mill were actually being disassembled. And in 1960, the Nova Scotia government terminated all forestry leases around North River. That area is actually now provincial protected area. This has been a really interesting find on the mouth of North River, and not one I would have expected, not one I had even planned. Such an interesting place and forgotten by many in this area. Well, after the break, I'm going to be headed off in search of a different kind of history. It's a Mi'kmaq history found at the end of Cape Dauphin. If you're traveling between Bedeque, Cape Breton, and Sydney, you will inevitably cross the Seal Island Bridge. Now, as you come down Kelly's Mountain towards the hairpin turn before you cross, there is a turn onto a dirt road. And that dirt road will take you out onto Cape Dauphin, a name that refers to the oldest son of French royalty. Follow that road to the very end, and you will find in the shadow of Cape Dauphin Mountain, Glooscap's Cave. And that's where I'm on my walkabout today. This trail crosses both private and public land. It ends on land in the Glooscap Wilderness area. Before 2021, this trail and the cave on the shore were known as Ferry Hole. But in 2021, it was named the Glooscap Cave Trail in recognition of a better understanding of what the shoreline and the cave represents to the Mi'kmaq. Something I'll explain a little more when I reach the shore. The public land, as well as some islands offshore, are part of an Indigenous protected conservation area. An organization called the Unamaki Institute of Natural Resources is the voice of the Mi'kmaq in Cape Breton on environmental and natural resource issues. They've been instrumental in working towards the development of protected areas, and in particular, Indigenous protected conservation areas such as this. These are areas, often ones of spiritual and cultural importance, where Indigenous communities have a primary role in conserving the ecosystem. Some of the private land the trail crosses has been up for sale, and the government, the Nova Scotia Nature Trust, and Mi'kmaq leaders have been working to identify ways to purchase the outstanding parcels of land to ensure their protection and ensure access along this route. The year of the renaming of this trail, the UINR was able to actually purchase a property here that includes the trailhead, the first part of the trail I'm traveling along, and a large section of the coastline. I've just crossed into a small disconnected section of the Glooscap Wilderness area. It is separate from the main body of that wilderness area. It is incredibly important to respect this area, even more so than perhaps many other hiking trails, because this area is sacred to the Mi'kmaq. Glooscap was created by 3 lightning bolts. The first one gave him his shape, the second one gave him his life, but even then all he could do was observe what was happening in nature. That third lightning bolt allowed him the freedom to live and walk amongst the people and the animals and to teach his lessons. This area, which the French would later give the name Cape Dauphin, was Glooscap's home. Glooscap, even to this day, is an important role model for Mi'kmaq youth through his stories. Many tribes use the stories to explain their culture and the natural world. The Glooscap Wilderness area protects much of the northern part of Kelly's Mountain between St. Anne's Bay and Great Bedore. The Mi'kmaq call Kelly's Mountain Glooscap Mountain, and there are discussions around the possibility of officially changing that name at some future point. This beach is a little bit difficult to get to, coming down the ropes and working your way through the river valley. but it is a very special and important place to the Mi'kmaq. In fact, they bring the elders here. This is Glooskap's home. And I want to share with you a story told to me by the Mi'kmaq Divert Cultural Center. One day, Glooskap was off this coast in his canoe. He was fishing and doing all the sorts of things you would do near your home. And two maidens on the shore were making fun of him. And he asked them to stop, and they wouldn't stop. And eventually he got so angry, he snapped his canoe in two. Those two pieces became the Bird Islands, which are just out there. I can see them right off this beach, sitting in the sun today. The maidens he turned into stone, and one of them is right here behind me. The other one, they believe, is further down, but it's not quite clear where the other one is. But those maidens protect the entrance to his cave. Now, his cave is less than 100 feet that way. Sometimes you can get to that cave at low tide when it's calm. Now we have, and I say we, I mean the crew as well, has tried to make our way to that cave at the moment, but the waves and the current is just too high at the moment, so it's impossible to get in there. But if you could make it, you would go into a spot that at low tide doesn't have water in the front, and you can work your way to the back. There are ropes in there to help you. There used to be ropes on the outside to help you make your way across even in conditions like these, but those ropes are now gone because of the weather and deterioration over time. Glooskap's cave is said to have been the last home he had on Earth before he left to the sky world. It was in the cave where Glooskap lived with his grandmother, the Bear Woman, and a young man named Pine Marten. It is also the place where it is said Glooskap will one day return. While I've been unable to reach the cave, know that even if conditions are good to get there, you might have to swim or wade in fairly deep ocean waters, even at low tide. None of these are easy, and sometimes conditions can change here very quickly, so you want to be very careful if you're going to try to make it. Just over that rock is Glooskap's cave, and it's no wonder that people come here, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, to understand this area better and to experience what it feels like to be here. Many of the places that I visited over the past while have had that little bit of mystery and the stories that go with it. And I think that's very exciting and fun at the same time. David Milibram once said that history is information, but memory is identity. And that is so true in each one of these hikes. And it's the history, the information, and the memories that I hope you find on your next walkabout.
Hey, come on, feel the sunshine. Oh, come on, won't you be mine? Hey, come on, feel the sunshine. Oh, come on, won't you be mine? Sunshine. Hey.